For Christmas, I finally took the pressure off. Sarah here, aka the Business Fixer. So this Christmas was the first one since my marriage ended, 6 years ago, where I finally felt genuinely at peace. Not elated, not overly emotional, just calm and at peace. In previous years, I would try to get into the Christmas spirit. I would put the decorations up. I would buy the Christmas snacks. I would do the things that you naturally do when you want Christmas to feel a certain way. And my parents have always tried to make Christmas feel special, and I'm truly grateful for that. But despite that, I would still often feel like I was dreading Christmas since my marriage ended. But it's not because of obviously anything my family did or anything, but it was just because of weight that I carried from my marriage ending. And this year was genuinely different. And I did something that I don't normally do, or didn't do, as I should say, is I didn't put the Christmas tree up. I didn't put any Christmas decorations up. And normally I prefer a real one rather than an artificial one. And this year it just didn't feel right. I didn't buy a stack load of food. I just enjoyed what my mum laid out on Christmas Day, especially the chocolate cake that she makes me every single year, because I've never been a mince pie person, Christmas cake or a Christmas pudding. Ugh. So I ate well. And what was really strange, I actually lost a couple of pounds. Who loses weight over Christmas? Apparently, I did. So, the most important difference, though, was I took the pressure off myself. I genuinely felt different. I stopped trying to make Christmas feel like I thought it should do. I just let it be neutral. And because I did that, it genuinely became one of the most enjoyable Christmases I've had in years. It was peaceful, it was calm, it was joyful, it was fulfilling. And that experience has stayed with me because it reflects something that I see time and time again with business owners, is we put so much pressure on ourselves, and it's the invisible rules that we seem to live by, the way that we carry responsibility, long after actually it even feels helpful anymore. And very often when someone asks the question of what's holding you back in business, the answer isn't always actually systems, strategy. It's definitely very rarely effort or capability. It's something far quieter and far more actually influential. And it's something they rarely describe. It's not in dramatic terms. These are some of the phrases that kind of might stand out to you. Is, I feel like I'm carrying too much. I'm still too involved. The business works, but it just doesn't feel how I want it to. I can't quite step back without feeling uneasy. Do any of these phrases sound familiar? Please make sure that you pop your comments in the chat. This sense of being stuck is not usually about growth alone. It's the experience of running the business, that mental load, that constant responsibility, that feeling of that there is something to hold, manage, or stay on top of, even when the business itself is functioning. But what often gets missed in this experience is actually being shaped from the inside out. You know, it's not being driven by the strategy, structure, etc., but by the internal rules that you are operating from. Rules about who you need to be, what is expected of you, what feels safe, what feels allowed. And I tell you, these rules are rarely conscious. They are internalized beliefs. And until that they are recognized and then potentially dealt with, they quietly dictate how far you let yourself go. These are what are commonly referred to as limiting beliefs. So what are they? Limiting beliefs are deeply held assumptions that sit in our subconscious and shapes how we see ourselves, the world, and what is actually possible for ourselves. These are not always obvious, and they don't normally announce themselves as beliefs. More often, they actually feel like facts, like the actual true reality, like just how things are. And a limiting belief, for example, around money could sound like money is hard to earn. I need to work twice as hard to justify what I'm paid. A limiting belief around self-worth or success might sound like I have to prove myself before I can relax. If it felt easy, I haven't really earned it yet. A limiting belief around visibility or leadership might sound like if I'm fully seen, I will be judged. It's safer to stay slightly under the radar. These beliefs are not chosen. They are absorbed over time. They form quietly through experience, repetition, and interpretation. And over time, they become part of how we operate because they live beneath the conscious thought. They shape behavior automatically. Decisions, hesitation, over effort, pressure, and self-reliance all flow from them without you even needing to think about it. This is why they are very effective at holding us back. Okay, so where do these beliefs actually come from? Well, most of them begin very early on in our childhood, even as little as like when we're toddlers. Because we are constantly, particularly as children, interpreting our environment. We learn based on what is rewarded. We learn based on what attracts criticism and what helps us feel accepted or secure, and we adapt accordingly. So if being responsible was earned approval, if responsibility becomes then part of our identity, if independence felt safer than relying on others, self-reliance becomes the rule. If money has, for example, when we're growing up, if money becomes associated with stress, conflict, or scarcity, beliefs about money are shaped then long before we've even earned a single penny, right? So if you think about it, your parents may say the phrase, money doesn't grow on trees. That's a limiting belief that they've held, which then goes into your subconscious, right? And these beliefs aren't necessarily taught explicitly, they're absorbed. So, like I said, in terms of the money side of things, if money beliefs are often formed by what we've heard growing up. It might be what you've watched the adults around you struggle with. It might be the emotional charge that's around money in the house. Even if it was never spoken about directly, those early messages really do tend to become rules. And later within our education, work, and early career experiences, those beliefs are often then reinforced. Expectations around performance, productivity, and reliability strengthen those internal rules about effort, value, and worth, because these beliefs sit at the level of your identity. They don't just disappear because circumstances change. They continue to operate even as your business grows, your income increases, or even the external success is achieved. So how do these show up day to day? Well, in established businesses, these beliefs rarely announce themselves as even beliefs. They show up as patterns of behavior. And for example, one of the most common is the belief that if you're not involved in your business, you're not really doing your job. Even when you may, as a business owner, want to step back, you want to lead strategically, you want to give your team more ownership, but there's this unease that when you do, that you're not then involved in the detail. And it could feel like you are disengaging when in reality it's actually what the business needs. Another belief that could be is that your worth is tied to you feeling needed. You know, when you've been the go-to person in your business for years, being needed becomes part of your identity. The idea of the business running smoothly without you can feel unsettling, not because you don't want the freedom, but because being needed has equaled value to you for such a long time. Now, does any of these, to anyone who's listening, that any of these sound familiar? I'd love to hear your comments in the chat. Now, another example could be that if you slow down, everything else will slow down too. When you've always been the one that's driving momentum in your business through your energy, easing off could feel risky. A part of you assumes that if you're not the one pushing, then things like standards will drop or things will drift. Underpinning all of this is a belief that will sit for many people, and that is that freedom has to be earned the hard way. Ease can feel undeserved unless it's been paid for through pain, effort, pressure, sacrifice. When things start to feel lighter, it can potentially even feel suspicious. And this is often where the self-doubt as a business owner really starts to show up, particularly when you're trying to reach that next level. Not because you are incapable, because you really are capable, but because the role you're stepping into requires a different internal framework to the one that you have always used, right? And this is where things like imposter syndrome starts to really kick in. So let's now talk about the real cost of staying exactly where you are right now. Because the cost of these beliefs, it's not an abstract thing. It plays out in your self-image first and then your business second. It shows up as hesitation when you want to charge more, even though you know your value is there. It shows up as discomfort when money comes in, as though it needs to be justified. It shows up as holding back your voice, softening your expertise, or not saying what you really think because being fully seen feels risky. And I tell you what, that whole being seen thing is definitely a thing for me. And believe it or not, I'm sitting here doing a live right now, but I know that I haven't been putting myself out there as much as I should be. And it's something that for 2026, I'm going to make sure that I am doing more of. You know, it shows up, you know, when you are, you know, overworking, overgiving, over-explaining yourself, because part of you still believes your worth is proved through effort, okay? And even when you're not working, you're still carrying the business in your head. Tell me, how many of you over this Christmas break have actually switched off? Because most of us as business owners feels like switching off is uncomfortable. Relaxation feels like it's conditional on us doing certain things within our business. You tell yourself you'll rest once things are handled. But in a growing business, things are never fully handled. We know this, but we still just then keep going. And this isn't about time management, it's a belief issue. If your subconscious believes that rest is only allowed once everything is safe, you'll keep moving the goalposts. If your subconscious believes ease must be earned, you'll create pressure even when you're trying to choose something that's lighter. If your subconscious believes you do not deserve a certain level of money, you'll find ways to cap it, spend it, dilute it, or sabotage it. Any of these sound familiar? The business may be profitable and respected, but is it feeling heavier to you than it should? Because if nothing changes underneath, 2026 Risks feeling exactly the same as 2025. Different goals, but same experiences. Now, how many of you want that? I certainly don't. So, what Christmas has taught me about letting go is that nothing changed because I simply decided to let go. What changed was based on the inner work I had already done on myself, especially over the last few months. I have spent time clearing my limiting beliefs around my own self-image, my worth, what I deserved, the pressure. That internal shift changed how I'm experiencing everything else. And because of that, I feel calm. I feel at peace. I feel joy. In business, the principle still applies. When pressure is removed, clarity improves. When responsibility is shared, leadership strengthens. When ease is allowed, performance doesn't fall apart, it often improves. Letting go is not about caring less, it's about updating your internal rules that you are living by. So I'm going to give you 5 practical steps to help you change what's holding your business back holding you back in your business. So this isn't about forcing yourself to think differently overnight. It's about working with your internal framework in a deliberate way. This work is not about changing everything at once. It's about working with one belief area at a time. That might be money, self-worth, success, visibility, or even relationships, okay? Now, this I'm not going to say comes from what this is something I've learned from from somebody who specializes in this stuff, because I'm not an expert in this stuff. And I have to give a shout out to Leanne Roman from Ignite You Global, because she is the one that has taught me these things. Okay, so this is coming from her, and I just want to share her knowledge with you guys. So the first thing is identify the belief. Start with journaling. Journaling for me, even in the last 6 years, has been a huge part of my my growth. It helped me through my breakdown, and it's something that I actively encourage regardless, right? Because I tell you what, the answers in this doesn't live in the business, because the belief often lives underneath everything. So keep it simple and focused on one area. Like I say, for example, money. What feels uncomfortable about receiving more? What do I believe I have to do to deserve it? What do I think would happen if I earned more than I do now? And as you're writing in your journal and answering these questions, do it as a free-flowing journaling. You're listening for repeated themes, not perfect wording. Then put it into words as a sentence that operates quietly in the background. For example, if I'm not involved, things will slip, or I can relax once everything is under control, or money is hard to earn, I don't deserve that level of success, or people will judge me if I earn more. And this will really start to help develop, okay, what this limiting belief actually is. Then look at the evidence you've potentially been using to support that limiting belief. Often there are 1 or 2 experiences that have generalized into a rule. Look back in terms of your childhood. Look back over your life in terms of, because like I said, this is something that is going to have been something that's built up over time. Recognize that this does not dismiss the experiences you've already had. It simply brings awareness to how that belief has been formed. So understanding, like I say, understand where it began. This is where the depth matters. Think about when you first learned this rule. What did it do? What did it protect you from? What did it help you achieve at the time? Many beliefs made sense when they're formed. So 2 and 3 are interlinked in terms of understanding what evidence you've got and also where it began. Then the important step is to release the belief and replace it. And this is a real exercise that Leanne is just an absolute genius with, because the old belief stays internal, right? It's not something, you don't write it down in terms of physically writing it, because you don't want to reinforce it. But what you do is you want to state it as if you're writing it in your head and then you are mentally putting a massive strike through it, and then you are visualizing ripping it up and burning it. Only then can you create that replacement belief and form it mentally. You form it mentally first. You write it down in your head, and you can also write it down physically. Keep it positive and present tense. For example, I am allowed to be well paid for the value I create. That's an example of a replacement belief. Okay, 5, you need to then reinforce that new belief and use it by saying that belief as a daily affirmation, writing it, saying it in front of the mirror, because it then exposes your subconscious to a different internal belief. And over time, repetition even builds familiarity, and familiarity reduces resistance. And as the new belief becomes more familiar, it begins to replace that old internal rule, allowing your self-image to update naturally. Okay, so one just final point I just wanted to do is, if you reconnect with your purpose, it also becomes an anchor, because belief work becomes far easier when it's grounded in your purpose. When you're clear on why you started your business in the first place and what it is meant to support, decisions become simpler. You can ask whether a behavior moves you closer to the life and business you want, or whether it keeps you tied to those old patterns. Okay, now we're in 2026. Happy New Year to you all. The aim now is to grow into a stronger version of yourself, rather than staying trapped in the internal rules that no longer fit. When beliefs shift, behavior follows. When self-image updates, decisions change. I can't even get my words out today, can I? So now, if you are in a position where you really want to now identify what is truly holding you back in your business, whether it's your limiting beliefs, whether it is something that is systems related, then the next step is to book in to your business performance strategy session. It creates a space to work out exactly what shifts are needed, what is working well, what needs strengthening, what needs redefining, and we can then go from there. Because sometimes the most powerful progress doesn't come from pushing harder, but from realizing what no longer needs to be carried. So if you want to book in your business performance strategy session, simply comment the word performance, or you can see the link that's going across your screen. You can, although you can't click on it directly, you can retype it and book in directly. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you found today a really useful one. Honestly, this is self-image work and working on my own limiting beliefs has been a game changer for me in 2025, and I know it's going to make such a difference to my 2026. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you all next week.